So I'm Luke, one of the owners of Emo Electric, and we're here today to talk about all of the different 1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower electric outboards that we sell. There's a lot on the market. In my opinion, there's no clear winner for which outboard is best. Often comes down to you, your boat, and how you use it. So today we're going to go into a lot of detail on these 4 motors, which are the Torqeedo Travel S, the ePropulsion Spirit, the Remigo One, and the Temo 1000. We'll run you through cost, runtime data, we'll do some on-the-water testing, and at the end of this video, you should have all the information you need to make an informed decision on which motor to purchase. If you're interested in buying any of these, we do sell them all in our online store. If you want to see the data we talk about in this video, head over to the comparison page on our website, and we'll put all of this data in a downloadable PDF so you can reference it as you make your decision. So let's do it. So to kick things off here, we'll tell you a little bit about each motor, some of our favorite features, and a little bit about the company and where the motors are made. So first off, we have the Torqeedo Travel S, 1.1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower, retails for $2,998 in short shaft. Torqeedo was the first company to ever make an electric outboard like this. They started about 20 years ago, and they've pretty much always been the market leader, although now ePropulsion is probably catching up, at least in the US. But we really love the new features that Torqeedo has added to the Travel S that they revamped in 2024. They eliminated the cables connecting the battery to the motor. The tiller is now built in. They added multiple tilt trim angles. You get a ton of data from this display, and it's really kind of the most feature-rich motor of any of the electric outboards that we're talking about today. So next up, we've got the ePropulsion Spirit. This is the ePropulsion Spirit Evo, very similar to the ePropulsion Spirit 1.0 Plus. We have a whole nother video we'll link here where you can learn about the differences between those two motors. But they're both 1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower, made in China by ePropulsion. ePropulsion has really exploded onto the scene in the last 5 years or so, and they're probably one of the largest manufacturers, along with Torqeedo, of electric outboards globally. We love how the Spirit has a floating battery, so if you drop it in the water, it's not sinking to the bottom, it's sitting right there. We have tried that. And the Spirit, as you'll see in some of our runtime tests, performs best in terms of speed and range at various power outputs. So when it comes to performance, Spirit is generally the winner here. Next up, we have the Remigo One. So this is a 1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower electric outboard, retails for $2,999, made by Remigo, who's a relatively new company based in Slovenia. And there's a few things we really love about the Remigo One. One is the fact that the battery is built into the motor itself, unlike these other 3 where they're removable. So there's some trade-offs there, but the big thing with the Remigo is that it just appears like it's more durable and can take more of a beating than any of these other motors. This housing is all aluminum. This tiller is all metal. Very little plastic involved in the construction here. It also has a transom bracket that stays on your boat, and then the motor lifts up and comes right off. And the Remigo One also has an adjustable shaft length, which makes our life a lot easier when it comes to stocking these things, but makes your life easier if you're using this motor across different boats. Allows you to really fine-tune it to the transom of your dinghy or to your sailboat. And if you get a different boat later on, you can stick with that motor. And finally, we've got the Temo 1000, so 1.1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower, made by Temo France in France. Relatively new entrant to the US market. Obviously, very different looking motor than the Travel or the ePropulsion Spirit. This retails for $3,499. And there's a few things we really love about the Temo 1000. Just like the Remigo, it has an adjustable shaft length, works a little bit differently, but you can slide where this transom bracket attaches to the motor either up or down to get that shaft length dialed in for your boat. Just like the Remigo, it does have a transom bracket that lives on your boat, and then you can take the Temo off. The tiller is stowable inside of the shaft, which gets it out of your way and protects it when it's not in use. And then the battery just slips right down inside of the shaft there and also stays out of your way. So a very cool, unique, newer design from Temo over in France. So today we're going to compare the manufacturer provided runtime to some tests that we're going to do out on the water ourselves. When it comes to the manufacturer provided runtime from Torqeedo, they say that the Travel S has a runtime of 59 minutes at full power. The battery is 10,080 watt hours. The ePropulsion Spirit has a runtime of 1 hour and 15 minutes at full power and a battery capacity of 1276 watt hours. The Remigo One has a runtime of 1 hour at full power, the battery capacity of 1085 watt hours. And finally, the Temo 1000 has a runtime of 50 minutes with a battery capacity of 949 watt hours. So before you install your Torqeedo motor onto your dinghy, you want to make sure that this mechanism is locked. Right? If it's unlocked or it's set for where the motor's up, it'll be more difficult to do this. So we often carry the Torqeedo either by that handle or the shaft, but I usually set it vertically on the boat. I'll raise the tiller up, turn it around, and we'll drop it in the water onto the dinghy. And then we'll tighten up these transom bolts. So the Torqeedo is actually the heaviest of all the motors we're talking about today. It comes in at 44.5 pounds. This shaft, the short shaft version, comes in at 25.5 pounds. And then the battery itself is 19 pounds. If you were to get the XP battery, the larger battery that works with this motor, it's about 23 pounds. So you add about 4 pounds onto it. Once you install the motor, one of the really nice features of the Torqeedo is that you can turn it all the way around, so you don't have to hang over the stern of the boat in order to install the battery. We're going to take off our cap right there that covers our power data port. We love that feature. We also love how they pre-install dielectric grease at the factory. And then we're going to grab our battery, again 19 pounds, drop it in there, drop it down, and then push it forward, and we hear that nice click. Then we can spin the motor around like so, and we're ready to get out on the water. So for the ePropulsion Spirit, similar to getting the Torqeedo on there, we're gonna fold the tiller up, and then we're gonna swing this transom bracket around. Then I usually grab the motor from right here and right here. Actually, make sure these are loosened up enough to fit on the transom. And again, just like the Torqeedo, make sure that the tilt trim mechanism is locked. And once it's on the stern of the boat, tighten it up. Something worth noting is if you have an angled transom, like we do on this dinghy, you'll want to adjust your trim setting when the motor is all the way down. And so we do that by moving this pin probably just up one slot for this transom, but if your transom's angled further, you just keep moving that pin. So to get the Spirit battery on, we're going to move the motor to the side. I think that's probably the easiest. And we're going to grab the battery from this blue handle and the handle back here. And you can see on the battery that there are these two channels on each side that line up with these tracks there. So we're going to drop it right on. The first couple times you do that, it might be kind of hard to line them up. I remember that was the case with me, but after you put the battery on a couple times, you get the hang of it, and then it drops in just like that. The weight of this is very similar to the Travel S. The battery also weighs 19 pounds. This shaft is about 2 pounds lighter at 23.5. So together they're 42.5 pounds. Once we've got our battery installed, we need to connect our power cable. So we're going to open up these caps, and then we're going to line this up before we put it in. So you can see there's a little piece there that lines up with the spot on the battery. What you don't want to do is push and twist, because then you can break those small pins in there. So you line it up, push it in, and then screw your connector in, and then we're all powered up and ready to go. All right, so now I'll show you how to install the Remigo One. Different than the Torqeedo or the ePropulsion motors, because it's got this transom bracket and then the battery is built into the shaft itself. So first we're going to take this bracket, which weighs 5.5 pounds. I'm going to center it on our dinghy here, tighten up these bolts. So the Remigo is actually the lightest weight motor of any of these. The motor itself is 26.5 pounds, plus this 5.5 pound bracket comes in at just 31 pounds, or excuse me, 32 pounds. So we're going to tighten those up, and we're going to take off this pin. I do recommend getting an extra one of those because they're easy to lose. And then when you're carrying the Remigo, the tiller can be used as a handle, but what we'll do now is pull down, lift up, turn the motor around, and then I usually just grab the top of the motor and the handle, drop it right on, put our pin back in, and then the Remigo doesn't have a button to power it on. Just pop your key in right there, and that acts as both the kill switch and your on-off button. All right, so next up we've got the Temo 1000. Altogether it weighs 39 pounds. Got a 3-pound bracket, 13-pound battery, and 23-pound motor. We'll show you how all that goes on. So I think the easiest way to do this is to have everything separate, not have the battery and the motor when you go to put it on, because then you're handling less weight. So first thing we'll do is put on this transom bracket. One thing that does kind of bother me about this is if these are to the side like that, they hit each other, so you have to have them angled. But it is nice if you have a slim transom bracket, these aren't very far apart. So there is both an advantage and a disadvantage to that. All right, so we'll get that centered, tighten these up. All right, and then we're gonna swing this around so it's facing us in the boat. We're gonna grab our motor. And this is gonna slip on like so. Then we're gonna push that down to lock it. And then we're gonna put this blue pin in through the side. And then our seat might be slightly in the way here. But what's kind of nice is you can do all of this from in the boat and then lift the motor up, swing it around, and drop it down into the water. And then once the motor is in the water, you can either drop the battery straight down, or you can tilt the motor up and put it at this angled position and slide the battery in like that. I think that's probably the easiest way. So we'll get our battery, make sure that this power connector is pointing up so it matches up with the motor, and then slide it right in. Once the battery's in, we can drop our motor down. When it comes to weight, the Remigo One is the clear winner with a total weight of just 32 pounds compared to 39 pounds for the Temo 1000, 42.5 pounds for the ePropulsion Spirit, and 44.5 pounds for the Torqeedo Travel. The only downside of the Remigo One is that you need to handle 26.5 pounds at once, whereas with these other motors, you can break apart the battery and the shaft. But the Remigo One is so light that its shaft weight, including the battery, is only a couple of pounds more than just the shaft of the other motors in this video. When it comes to installing and removing one of these electric outboards from your boat, we find that the Temo 1000 and the Remigo One are the clear winners with their removable transom brackets, which make this process faster and easier than with the Torqeedo Travel or the ePropulsion Spirit. We also love how the Temo 1000 and the Torqeedo Travel have cableless connections between their batteries and their motors, which make it faster and easier to install the batteries and less likely to damage the connection points between the two. So we're out on the water testing each one of these electric outboards out on a 9.5-foot inflatable dinghy from Further Customs. A few things to keep in mind, one of which is that we're in very calm water right now. It's an overcast day, not a lot of breeze. So if you're out on the water in windy conditions or where there's a lot of tide, all of these runtime numbers will go down in terms of both speed and your actual range. So for the Torqeedo Travel S, at 100% power output, we've got a top speed of about 4.4 knots, and our runtime is about 54 minutes. So now we'll slow this down to about 3/4 throttle, which is likely the sweet spot for most of these motors. All right, so now we're on to about 3/4 throttle, about 75%, just above actually, about 800 watts. Our speed has dropped down to 3.9 knots, but our runtime has jumped up to 1 hour and 13 minutes. So now we'll bump this down to 50% power output. So at 50% power output, we're up to 1 hour and 36 minutes of runtime, maybe a little bit more, hour 40 minutes, and our speed has dropped down to 3.5 knots. So you can see big jump in runtime, but not a huge drop in speed because these motors have such great torque. So now we're at about 25% power output, or 290 watts. Our runtime has jumped up to 3 hours, and our speed is still above 3 knots. We're at 3.3, 3.4, right in there. So if you're ever out with an electric outboard and you start to run low on battery, you can see you can drop your speed down, your runtime jumps way up. Now we're up to 3 hours and 15 minutes, and you should have plenty of range to get home. All right, so we've got the ePropulsion Spirit at 100% power output, or 1,000 watts. Looks like our speed's kind of hovering between 4.2, 4.3 knots. And then our runtime, provided by our display, is at 1 hour and 12 minutes. We're at 97% state of charge. ePropulsion says 1 hour 15 from 100%, so it seems like they're pretty accurate with their estimates. All right, so bringing our power down to about 75%, or we're at about 780 watts right now. You can see our runtime's jumped up to 1 hour and 34 minutes, and then our speed has only dropped to about 3.94 knots there. We continue dropping our speed. We'll see what we get at 50% throttle. So at 50% throttle, or about 500 watts, we've jumped all the way up to 2 hours and 24 minutes of runtime, and our speed has barely changed. Right now we're at 3.8, 3.9 knots. So very marginal difference in speed, huge jump in runtime. Yeah, still 2 hours and 24 minutes, 3.9, 3.8 knots. Very impressive. All right, and now we're down to 25% power output, about 240 watts. Our runtime has jumped up to 5 hours and 12 minutes, and our speed has only dropped to 3.3, maybe 3.4 knots. So really impressive low end range from the Spirit 1.0 Plus. All right, so our speed test for the Remigo One is going to be a little different than the other motors because we don't get real runtime data. We can see our state of charge, on the right-hand side of the head of the motor, but we can't see how much time we have remaining. So right now we're at 100% power output. We're at 4.2 knots here, so pretty similar to those other motors. We also can't get exactly to 75% or 25% because we adjust our speed in increments of 10 on this motor. So we're going to go down to 80% power output there. We can see that our speed has dropped down to 3.8 knots, 3.7 maybe, so not a huge difference. We'll come down to 50% here. And so now at 50% power output, we've dropped down to a speed of 2.8, maybe 2.9 knots. And finally, we will bring it down to 30%. All right, so at 30%, we're down to a speed of 2.2 knots. All right, so we're doing the runtime test for our Temo 1000. Right now we're at 100% power output, or about 1100 watts. We've got a a speed of 4.4 knots, and then our runtime is at 46 minutes. Keep in mind, we are down to 91% state of charge, so our runtime at 100% charge should be a little bit higher, probably 50, 55 minutes, somewhere in there. So now we'll drop this down, get to about 75% power output. All right, so we're at about 75% power output, 770 watts more or less, and our speed hasn't changed too much. We're at about 3.94 knots there, so not too much of a drop off when we bring our power output down a bit. Now we're going to go down to 50%. All right, so at about 50% power output, or 540 watts, our speed has barely changed. We're down to 3.6 knots here, 3.7. All right, so we're at a 25% power output, just above it, 300 watts. And our speed here, again, hasn't changed much, 3.3, 3.4 knots. So the Temo seems like it was a little bit less at the high end than the other motors, but at the low end, it seems to be doing quite well. Please keep in mind that this data comes from our tests, which were done in relatively calm conditions. Speed and runtime will vary based on wind, current, and other environmental factors. Also keep in mind that the data for the Remigo One runtime was estimated by dividing the battery capacity in watt hours by the power output in watts, because the Remigo One does not display real runtime data. When it comes to speed, we can see that all four motors perform pretty similarly at 100% and 75% power output. The Remigo One lags behind a bit on speed, especially at the low end. This might have to do with the fact that it is not a direct drive motor and could lose some efficiency there. When it comes to runtime, the ePropulsion Spirit is the winner, which isn't a surprise as it has the largest battery capacity of any motor. The Torqeedo Travel and Remigo One are up next, kind of the mid-size batteries, and then the Temo 1000 has the least amount of runtime, generally speaking, because it has the smallest battery. So one of the really great things about the Torqeedo motor is how rich the display is. You get more information from the Torqeedo Travel S than any other electric outboard that we're talking about today, and we'll show you what that is. So there's a few different options for displays here. The one that we're on is what I find most useful, but there's one that shows you the power output in watts, one that shows you your speed in the center, but the one that I like gives you your runtime big in the center of your screen and your state of charge represented by that battery. So you can see right now we have a range of 11 nautical miles and a runtime of 3 hours and 23 minutes. And then in the bottom of the screen, we've got our power output in watts on the left, our RPMs on the right. The upper right is our state of charge, and then our upper left is our speed. This is also the only motor that has a built-in GPS, and therefore the only motor that gives you your speed. Another cool thing about the computer in the Torqeedo here is that you can connect it to the Torqeedo app on your phone, which can show you your previous trips, but it also allows you to update the software on this by piggybacking off the connection between the motor and your phone, which also none of the other electric outboards that we're talking about today have. So looking at the display on the Spirit, one thing to point out is that this one is actually the ePropulsion Spirit Evo, not the Spirit 1.0 Plus. They're basically the same thing. The Evo has a few extra features, but it's the same battery, same motor. We have a whole nother video on that if you want to learn more. But the displays are different. So we'll overlay the display on the screen here of the 1.0 Plus, but on the Evo, we can see our runtime. So that's our time remaining in minutes and hours. If I press this up button, it'll show me how long I've been running the motor for today. We get our state of charge out of 100 up at the top there, but if I press OK, it'll tell us the voltage of our battery. Typically, percentage is what we're looking at. And then at the bottom there, we can see our power output in watts. Right now, that's 215, which is about 20% throttle. On the Spirit 1.0 display, you get the same information, it's just not quite as rich. So instead of getting your percentage out of 100%, it's in a little bar and a circle that rounds it to the nearest 10%. Other than that, you get the same information there. So the display on the Remigo is limited, right? There's a lot of trade-offs with this motor. I think it's probably one of the most durable electric outboards that we sell, but we don't get much in the way of speed, runtime data, all that. We don't have a screen. We can see our state of charge rounded to the nearest 10% with those green lights there. And then if I press this button, we'll start to move. All right, so now we're going forward, about 10% power output. And we can see there's one light lit up there. And that's all the information that we really get from the Remigo. So you can't see how much runtime you have left. That is an issue for some people, but in reality, you get used to using this motor pretty quickly. You'll get an idea of how far you're going and what sort of speeds you need to use to accommodate that range. So the display on the Temo is nice and simple. Gives us 3 pieces of information, really all that we really need. We've got our state of charge up at the top, which is 85%. Then our power output in watts in the middle, running around 550. And then our runtime in hours at 1 hour and 24 minutes. So not as much information there as the Torqeedo motor, and similar amount to the ePropulsion Spirit. So the model of the Travel S that we have right here is the tiller version. You can convert this motor to a remote throttle version. This motor does not come stock in that version, so you have to purchase the tiller version and then purchase the remote kit separately. In that remote kit, there's everything you need to hook up a Teleflex steering line right there, as well as a wired remote throttle that you'd put next to your steering wheel. The Travel XP, the 5 horsepower version of this, you can get stock in either tiller or remote, but the Travel S, you have to buy the kit afterwards. So on the tiller version, you can see we've got our kill switch right here. And what's really nice about this tiller is its ability to raise and lower. You can see this almost goes 90 degrees when it's all the way up. And then to fold it down, we're just going to push that lever after it gets level. And then it drops down and we can get it totally out of the way. And if the motor's not on the transom, it comes even further down. I also really like how this tiller is just well built. It's all sealed. There's really not much to go wrong with it. The grip is really smooth. It's comfortable on your hand. You can also adjust the friction to raising and lowering the tiller. So there's a machine screw right in here. I have this set so I can take my hand off the tiller and it doesn't fall down, which isn't the case with some other electric outboards that we're talking about today. So on the Spirit 1.0 Plus, the only option for controlling your steering and your speed is a tiller. It looks very similar to this, and it's not replaceable with anything else. On the Spirit Evo, you can use the tiller, which we have set up here today, or you can use a wireless top mount throttle that mounts to a horizontal surface, or a hardwired side mount throttle that also has a separate screen that you can mount to a vertical surface. If you're doing that and you're a sailor, you can put a pin underneath the battery that locks the motor centered, so then you can use your sailboat's rudder or tiller to steer. And if you're on a motorboat that has a steering wheel, you can get the remote kit to hook this up to a standard Teleflex steering line. But on the tiller version on the Evo, you can see that it does lift up, not as high as the Torqeedo, and it also won't stay up, right? There's no way to adjust that friction. It does also come down, you pull it out, and then you can push it down. So you can still get it out of the way, but it doesn't have, it's not quite as feature rich as with the Travel S. So the Remigo One only comes in a tiller version. It does have a way to control the speed with a remote. So obviously this is a lot different than any other of the electric outboards that we sell in terms of controlling your speed, right? On the Temo, Torqeedo Travel, and ePropulsion Spirit, we twist the end of the tiller handle to give the motor more or less power and change between forward and reverse. On the Remigo, we use these buttons. So if I click down there, we go faster. If I click down here, we go slower. If I press both of them, we go to neutral. And then if I press the top one there, we're going to go into reverse. If I want to go faster in reverse, I press it again. If I want to come back to neutral or go into forward, I just press the other button, and then we get going there. So that was one of my concerns when I first saw this motor, is I thought that would be pretty clunky, but after using it a couple times, it's pretty easy to get used to. You know, if you can reach the end of the tiller, you can reach the top of the motor pretty easily. But if you do want to control your speed at the end of the tiller, you can buy the wireless remote control for the Remigo. We don't have one with us here today, but it clips on to the end of the tiller, and then you can, it has the same buttons that's right here, but on the end of your tiller. So you don't have to move your hand around as much. It's also nice because you can use that remote control to control your power output somewhere else in the boat besides right next to the motor. So the Temo 1000 only comes in a tiller version. Its tiller is quite unique. You can stow it very easily in the motor. So you fold it up, drop it in, and then it's totally out of the way. So we like how that protects the tiller from damage and just makes this motor quite portable. When you want to go and use it again, just raise it up, drop it down, and we're ready to go. But there's no remote throttle option for the Temo 1000. Only way to control your speed is with the tiller right here. And just like other electric outboards, or most other electric outboards, will turn the tiller one way to go into forward, and then turn the tiller the other way to go into reverse. So another advantage of the Travel S is its tilt and trim mechanism. Not only can you go all the way up or all the way down, but you have a number of shallow water tilt angles in between. So if you want to raise your motor, right now ours is locked, you can lift this lever up. If you lift it up and back, as I just did, the motor is still down, but it's unlocked. So this is a good thing to do if you're going to be in shallow water. So if you run aground, the motor will kick up. If you want to lift the motor up to a different tilt position, you pull that lever up, let it drop down, and you raise it up a little bit, and then it'll lock. So that's our first shallow water angle, our second shallow water angle, and we've got another one there, another one there. You can see the tiller is starting to get close to the floor, but I can raise it up, and another one there, and that's our max tilt angle. So that's 90 degrees to the bracket. You can see it's not 90 degrees to the water because our transom's angled, but because it has that high tilt angle, the pylon still easily comes out of the water. Another great feature with the new Torqeedo is the ability to lock and unlock your steering. So right now, our steering is totally unlocked. So you can see how the battery wants to fall down because it's heavier than the tiller. But we have this lever here on the back. So we're gonna bring this back to the center. And if we push this all the way up, it keeps this motor locked in the middle. So that's a great feature for sailors who want to use their boat's tiller and rudder to steer. But even if you're using this on a dinghy, it can be nice to keep this centered when you raise the motor up all the way. And then the last option with this lever in the middle prevents the motor from turning more than 60 degrees to either side. And that's really nice because then when you trim the motor up, the battery doesn't slam down and hit the side of your boat or the floor. It just sits like so. When it comes to steering and tilting and trimming the motor, again, this isn't quite as feature rich as the Travel S. Right now the motor is all the way down and it's locked. If we pull this pin out to the side and raise that up and then release the pin, now our trim is unlocked. So again, if you're running in shallow water, that's what you want to do, but be careful if you use reverse, it will also come up. If we want to tilt the motor up all the way, we'll pull that pin out and then lift that, push down on the tiller or grab the handle here, and that comes up all the way. You can see it does want to kind of turn to the side, so we can put the tiller in there in this boat, but if we bring the tiller up, it does want to turn upside down because of the weight of the battery. And unless you can prevent that happening on your boat, like we can here by putting the tiller between the floor and the tube, there's no real way to stop that from happening. If you want to lock the steering on this motor, you do so by removing the battery and then putting a pin underneath. So we'll undo our cable there, take our battery off, and then you can see that right there, there's a hole. And that's, you get a pin when you buy this motor, you bring that centered, you drop the pin in there, you put the battery back on, and then your steering is locked. And you can use your sailboat's rudder or tiller to steer. All right, so to tilt and trim the Remigo up, what they recommend is that you actually lock the steering, which you do by pulling the end of the tiller forward, then raising it up, and that locks the motor centered. So again, if you're a sailor, you can do that and then use your boat's rudder to steer. And then to raise the motor up, you push this lever back and then pull forward on the tiller handle. You can do that when the tiller is down, but it's a little bit harder to do because then you have to get all the way down low. We can see that the max tilt angle on the Remigo is not nearly as high as the Torqeedo or the Spirit or the Temo. So that pod at the bottom is more likely to sit in the water. But if you adjust your shaft length, you might be able to get it out a little bit more. Also, if you don't have an angled transom, it's less likely to end up down there. To drop the motor down, you're going to press down on your tiller and press down on that. And then once that's disengaged, it'll come down. And there are these rubber stoppers right here that hit the bracket that make it so the motor doesn't slam down. And then it locks in and we're good to go once again. So tilting and trimming the Remigo up and down, relatively straightforward. You can lock the steering centered by pushing this lever up. You just have to make sure the motor is straight. That comes in there. And then this is locked centered. To raise the motor, Temo recommends pulling up on the handle rather than pushing down on the tiller. First, we'll need to unlock our tilt trim by pushing that down, and then we can raise our motor up. If we want to lock it in this up position, we need to pull it up high and then push down on that lock and then drop it down. And that's our fully up angle. A little bit higher than the Remigo One, but not quite as high as the Spirit or the Travel. This motor does also have a shallow water tilt angle. To put the motor back down, we're going to pull forward on the top of the motor, push that lever down, and then that shallow water angle will come in, right, oh, just missed it, right about there. So that allows you to tilt the motor up about 20 degrees and get it a little further out when you're in shallow water. So we showed you how these motors get tilted up on the water, but it's a lot easier to see the difference between these motors on land. So we're going to tilt them all up so you can kind of compare the max tilt trim angle on each motor. So we've tilted all of these motors up to their maximum tilt height. You might be wondering, why is this important? Well, if the tilt height is too low, then this pylon can end up sitting in the water even when the motor is pulled up, or rubbing up against the sand if you're pulling your dinghy up and onto the beach. So the winner of this segment of our video is clearly the Torqeedo Travel. The max tilt height here is 90 degrees. It also has another tilt height where it's almost at 90 degrees if you wanted it lower for some reason. Next up, we've got the ePropulsion Spirit Evo. This has a max tilt height of 85 degrees. The Spirit 1.0 Plus, which is ePropulsion's other 1 kilowatt, 3 horsepower electric outboard, has a slightly lower max tilt height of 75 degrees. So if you have, this is especially important if you have an angled transom, right? All of these motor mounts are sitting at 85, 90 degrees, but if your transom's angled back, that pylon would sit a little bit lower. So if you do have an angled transom and you're between the Spirit Evo and 1.0 Plus, it might be better to go with the Evo. Next up, we have the Remigo, which has the lowest max angle here. See, it can't get up. It will go up a little bit more, but it locks right here. So it's a little disappointing to see that. Most likely that this pylon ends up hitting the sand or getting stuck in the water. What is kind of one of the redeeming qualities of the Remigo One in that regard is when the tiller is extended like this, it can't move, or if the tiller's up like that, it's locked and it also can't move. So the part that would be sitting in the water or dragging is this aluminum part here, not your propeller. So not the end of the world. Also, because you can adjust the shaft length, this is ideal for your boat. It may be a little bit higher up and thus bringing everything a little bit further out of the water. And then finally, we've got the Temo 1000. Their max tilt height is the same as the Evo at 85 degrees. And again, if you adjust your shaft length and bring everything up a little bit, this will be even further out of the water. So don't expect it to be an issue with the Temo. You can also easily lock this motor centered, so if anything does rub, it would be the front of the pylon there. So first off, we'll talk about the Torqeedo Travel S. So this battery comes on and off very easily. You just lift that orange lever there, slide it back, lift the end of the battery up, take it off. Has a cable-less connection, so when you make the physical connection, it connects the power and data port on the motor to the power data port on the battery. Easy to put right back on. Next up, we have the Spirit battery. So this is what comes stock with the Spirit Evo or Spirit 1.0 Plus. It does have a cabled connection, and when you're taking these on and off, you want to make sure you're not pushing and twisting to line it up. You want to line it up first so that you don't break any of these small pins in there. And then this metal connector twists right on. To remove the battery, you'll lift up on the blue handle and the gray handle, and it comes right off. And we'll line up the channels on the battery with these two parts on the motor to drop it back on. The first couple times you do that, might be a little tricky to get it on there, but you get used to it pretty quickly. Next up, we have the Remigo One, and we can't show you how to take the battery on and off because it's built into the shaft. So that has some benefits and some drawbacks. The main benefit is there's no connections to corrode or break. A failure in those electrical contacts is probably the most common issue we see with electric outboards. And by permanently installing the battery into the shaft, Remigo has eliminated that point of failure. Now, it does still have a charge port like all of these motors do, so you could have corrosion issues there, but only one charge point, not a second point to connect the battery to the motor. Then finally, we've got the Temo 1000. Temo 1000 has a removable battery, but it's integrated into the shaft. So you can lift it up just like that. It also has a cableless connection point. So that meets a point that's down in the shaft. Maybe you can come in and see that. And so there's one piece of plastic that guides it down, and then the power data connection is just behind there. So you just have to make sure that the battery is facing the right way when you drop it into the shaft. So when you're thinking about range with an electric outboard, you can get a rough idea of that by dividing the capacity of the battery in watt hours by the max power output of the motor in watts. That'll get you your full power runtime. So for the Torqeedo Travel S, comes with a 1080 watt hour battery. It's an 1100 watt motor, so you get about 59 minutes of runtime at full power. The ePropulsion Spirit is a 1 kilowatt motor with a 1276 watt hour battery, so you're looking at about an hour and 15 minutes of runtime at full power with the stock battery. When it comes to the Remigo One, you've got a 1000 watt motor with a 1085 watt hour battery, so you're looking at an hour of runtime or maybe slightly more. And then finally, with the Temo 1000, it's an 1100 watt motor with a 949 watt hour battery, so you're looking at about 50 minutes of runtime at full power. So what we've found over the years is that a lot of people overestimate how much runtime they need. We just ran you through the runtime of each of these motors at full power, but if you've watched the other part of this video, you can see that if you bump your power output down a little bit, your speed doesn't change much and your range increases pretty significantly. So we find that the stock battery on all of these motors is plenty of runtime for 90–95% of our customers. But if you do need more runtime, there are ways to extend it for some of these motors. So for the Travel, the Spirit, and the Temo 1000, it's very easy to extend your runtime. You just buy another battery. When you've used up one, you swap it out with another. With the Remigo, there's no way to extend your runtime other than charging your battery because the battery is built into the motor. With the Travel XP, you can buy, or excuse me, with the Travel S, you can buy a second standard Travel battery, or you can buy a Travel XP battery. So the Travel XP is the 1.6 kilowatt, 5 horsepower version of the Travel S, very similar. We've got another video on that if you need a little bit more power. But the Travel S works with its standard battery as well as the XP battery. The XP battery is 1,425 watt hours, so it extends the range of the Travel S by about 40%. So if you're thinking about going with the Travel, but you want a little bit more runtime than what comes standard, you can upgrade it to the Travel XP battery. Use that with this motor. Those are the only two batteries that work with a Travel. There's no third-party options, and you cannot use a larger Torqeedo battery. So ePropulsion gives you the most flexibility with battery options and also the most runtime out the gate with a standard battery. So the Spirit battery has about 20% more runtime than the stock battery on any of these other electric outboards. So it's kind of the most bang for your buck with portability, range, and runtime. If you want to extend your range with the Spirit battery, you have a couple options. Our recommendation is typically to buy a second Spirit battery because it fits right on top of the cowling so well, very portable, lots of good stuff there. But you can also use a larger ePropulsion battery or a third-party battery. So if you're going that route, you would take this battery off, or you wouldn't have that battery to begin with, And then ePropulsion makes a cowling, which we'll show you a picture of. I don't have one here. And it's just a little plastic cover for this that makes it look a little bit nicer. You don't have to get it. It's just for aesthetics. And then we'll also show you a picture of the third-party battery connector. So one end plugs into here, and then it comes off into a positive and negative ring terminal. And that allows you to use any compatible 48-volt battery. There is a minimum continuous amp power output, but most 48-volt batteries meet that, especially if it's lithium. So if you are going to go third party, we do have third party options on our site, and we highly recommend getting some high quality lithium marine grade battery, not just using a lead acid. I think you'll be disappointed if you go that route. But the Spirit is definitely the winner with runtime stock out the gate and flexibility in other battery options. On the other end, we have the Remigo, and it's not possible to extend your range with the Remigo One except by charging the motor. So one of the benefits of the Remigo is you don't have all of those connection points, but one of the drawbacks is you can't just swap out another battery and extend your range. Finally, when it comes to the Temo 1000, to the best of our knowledge, it's not compatible with third-party batteries, and at least at this time in the US, Temo doesn't have any of its larger batteries available. So if you do need more range with the Temo 1000, you can of course charge your battery, or you buy a second one of these batteries here. If you do need to purchase a second battery, the cost of a battery, at least at this point in time, is $1,349 for the Spirit Battery Plus and the standard Torqeedo Travel battery. The Travel Battery XP, that one with more capacity, is $1,749. An extra battery for your Temo 1000 is $1,249. And then you obviously can't get an extra battery for the Remigo, but if you do need to replace the battery for the Remigo, at this point in time, the cost is $900 for the battery, plus any installation costs from Remigo or your local Remigo dealer. All right, so now we're on to how you charge these batteries and how long it takes to charge them. So all these motors come stock with a standard AC charger. One end plugs into the wall outlet, the other end plugs into the motor or the battery. Keep in mind that charger usually comes in the box with the motor. At least that's the case with the Travel and the Spirit. So if you buy a second battery, you don't get a second charger. You have to buy that separately. But we'll show you how all those, or where all of those plug in on these batteries. So on the Torqeedo, we have a nice cap for the charge port there. It plugs right in. And one of the nice things about the Torqeedo motor is you actually get live charge time when you're charging this battery and it's hooked up to the motor. So you plug in the charger, you power it on, and it will tell you how much time is remaining before it's fully charged. Next up, we have the Spirit. Charger goes right in there. With the Remigo, your charger plugs right in the top. This cap is kind of nice. It flips down. It's on a spring, which should keep it nice and sealed. We also like how big these pins are on the Remigo. They're just less likely to break compared to some of the smaller pins on the Spirit or the Travel. And then with the Temo 1000, you pull your battery out. We have a nice rubber seal, and then your charger plugs right in there. Now, in terms of charging options, there's a few different ways. So they all come stock with a standard charger. With the Temo, you also have the option to get a 12-volt DC charger. Great option for cruising sailors. But to the best of our knowledge, there's no fast charger available, and there's no solar charge controller available for the Temo 1000. With the Remigo and the Spirit, you have kind of the widest range of charging options. So you have your standard AC charger, plugs into a regular wall outlet. You also have a fast AC charger, plugs into a regular wall outlet, but brings that charge time down. And then you can also use a solar charger or a 12-volt DC charger. The solar charger for the Remigo has a maximum power output of 160 watts, whereas for the Spirit and the Travel, that max output on their solar is 400 watts. Most people don't have enough space for 400 watts of solar on their boat. Usually we're talking 100 or 200 watt panel, but if you do have the space and you want to be able to charge fast with solar, the Travel and the Spirit will charge faster than the Remigo. And then finally for the Travel, you've got that standard charger, and then you have a 12 volt charging cable and a solar charging cable. One of the cool things is that the DC charger is actually already built into the battery. So when you get the 12 volt or the solar chargers for the Travel, it's really just a cable. For the 12 volt, one end goes into a 12 volt outlet, the other plugs in here, and for the solar, one end is here and the other end is standard MC4 connectors. So that's kind of nice because it's not as bulky, whereas with all of these other motors, the DC or the solar chargers are a separate little unit there. The Torqeedo Travel takes about 6 hours to charge with the standard AC charger. The ePropulsion Spirit Battery Plus takes about 8.5 hours on the standard charger. The Remigo One is about 6 hours on the standard charger, and the Temo 1000 is about 5.5 hours on the standard charger. One thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about charge time is that it's not often you are running your battery all the way down to 0%. So in reality, the time it takes to charge the motor up will be less than the numbers we just discussed. If you're interested to learn the charge times for the fast chargers, the DC charger, or the solar charge controllers, head over to our website, which is emoelectric.co. Head over to the page, that's the 3 horsepower outboard comparison, and you'll be able to download a PDF guide with all the information that we've discussed in this video and the other comparison videos as well. So regardless of which of these electric outboards you choose, it is important to take care of your battery. So these batteries, their lifespan depends on a few different things, mainly time, how it's taken care of, and how many cycles it goes through. Unless you are using your boat 50, 100 days a year, if you're in the top 5% of people who use their boats, it's unlikely you're going to get to kind of the max charge and discharge cycles on these motors. What's more likely is eventually you'll need to replace the battery because it loses capacity over time. So just like your phone, all lithium batteries lose a few percentage points of max state of charge every year. So we usually say that most of these batteries have a useful life of about 7 years if you've taken good care of them. You might be able to use it beyond 7 years, but your max capacity will be significantly less than it was when you first bought the motor. And the way that I like to think about this is when you buy a new battery, you're basically prepaying what would be your fuel and maintenance expense on a gas outboard for about 7 years. In terms of best charging practices for lithium batteries, you want to avoid leaving your battery always at 100% state of charge or always close to 0% state of charge. So that's why, like, if you have an iPhone, it won't charge it up to 100% in the middle of the night, right? It waits till an hour or two before you wake up. Similar thing with these motors. So if you've gone out in the water, you've used your electric outboard, you've come back and you've got 40 to 60% or so state of charge, and you're not going to go out in the water for, another week or two, instead of charging that battery back up to 100% right away, wait until the day before you go out on the water. Similarly, if you've run it down to less than 10-20%, charge it back up. Ideally around 50%, you can charge it back to 100, and we kind of get to the other end of that. So obviously there's what's best for the battery and then what's practical for you, but it's good to keep that in mind. Moreover, all of these manufacturers recommend that you check the state of charge on your battery once every 3 months when the battery is not in use. So all that means is have the battery stored somewhere over the winter, hopefully where it's not going to freeze, or definitely where it's not going to freeze. And then every 3 months, check the state of charge. That's very easy to do on the Remigo, right? You just put the key on there, On the Temo, you can press a button on the top of the battery and the battery will light up and show your state of charge rounded to the nearest 25%. And with the Spirit and the Travel, you have to plug the battery into the motor in order to get your state of charge. So the first thing we're going to talk about with these motors is what they're made out of and how they're constructed. As a quick aside, all of these propellers are plastic. They're all two-blade. As far as I'm aware, the only option you have with any of these props is with Torqeedo, who makes a weedless propeller that is supposed to be a little bit higher speed on the top end, but a little bit less efficient and less likely to get seaweed caught on it. But essentially, with all of these motors, we recommend having an extra prop. They're plastic by design, so if you hit a rock, you're breaking a prop. That is not nearly as expensive as the motor itself. But to get started on motor construction, we'll start with Torqeedo. We have a plastic shell for the battery. The tiller is made of plastic, and then up here is metal. We have an aluminum shaft, and then as we drop down lower, we have our motor pod here. The bottom of this pod has a plastic skeg on it. You actually have to install this when you buy the motor, and personally, I'd rather have a metal one, but I believe Torqeedo has done that on purpose so that it's sacrificial, right? So if you do hit something, you snap that off and you're less likely to damage the tilt trim mechanism, the pod, or some other more expensive part of the motor. The construction of the Spirit is quite similar. Plastic housing for the battery, plastic tiller, and then we have an aluminum shaft, metal tilt trim mechanisms, and then everything down here is all metal, including the skeg. Next up, we have Remigo, who probably has the least plastic in this entire construction. The only plastic on this motor is the prop, this cap here, or part of that cap, these knobs, and then a covering for the end of the tiller. The rest of this motor is metal. They have an aluminum housing for aluminum unibody, as they say, that houses the battery, everything inside of the motor. We like how this charge port is metal, buttons are metal, so really durable looking motor right here. Then finally, we have the Temo, probably a little bit more plastic on it than the Remigo, but less than the Spirit or the Travel. We've got an aluminum tiller here with a little plastic cover on the end. The motor bracket here is all metal. The main housing is anodized aluminum. And then down below, this skeg is plastic. It does have a little kind of metal casing on the tip where it would hit the ground, so that should do something to protect this. And then I believe the housing of the motor right here is metal. Certainly feels like it. So when you decide to buy one of these motors, you need to make sure that you're getting the appropriate shaft length for your boat, or in the case of the Temo and Remigo, you just want to double check that the shaft will be long or short enough. More than likely is with these guys, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. With the Spirit and the Travel, they come in a few different shaft lengths, and when Torqeedo and ePropulsion measure they're talking about the length of these shafts, they're measuring from right where this bracket sits on, in this case, the motor stand, but generally your outboard bracket or your transom, down to a center line of the middle of the prop. So right there would be our shaft length. All the numbers we're talking about today are that measurement. So you may see slightly different numbers in the literature. When you are measuring for a shaft length for an electric outboard, you want to basically measure the height of your transom. We have other videos on this and other resources on our website. Just to run through it quickly, if you have a dinghy, you want a couple inches. It varies by manufacturer, but somewhere between 2 and 4 inches between the bottom of your boat and the tip of the propeller in a vertical position. So the Torqeedo Travel comes in long or short shaft. The short shaft version is 24.6 inches and the long is 29.5. According to Torqeedo, the short shaft version is ideal for a 15-inch transom and the long is ideal for a 20-inch transom. For the ePropulsion Spirit, you have 2 options for the Spirit Evo and 3 options for the 1.0 Plus. The 1.0 Plus is available in an extra short shaft, which measures 20.7 inches. You want your transom height to be less than about 15 and a half if you're going to go for the extra short shaft. The 1.0 Plus and the Evo come in a short shaft version that's 24.6 inches and a long that's 29.5 inches, which are the same measurements as the Travel. Remigo has an adjustable shaft length, which according to them is between 15 and 23 inches. They are taking into consideration the diameter of the prop, but when we compare that to that same measurement on a Torqeedo or an ePropulsion motor, the maximum shaft length is 29.5 inches. So the Remigo in its longest shaft adjustment is the same length as a long shaft Travel or Spirit. And then you can go pretty much as short as you want with the Remigo. They say the least is 15 inches, but as far as we can tell, you could go even shorter than that if you wanted or needed to. And then finally, the Temo, similar to the Remigo, except it's not quite as long on its longest setting. On its longest setting, it is 24.5 inches, and then you can really make it as short as you'd like. So with the Spirit or the Travel, you have to buy the right shaft length before you purchase the motor, whereas with the Remigo and the Temo, you can adjust the shaft length after you purchase it. It's relatively easy to do that on both of these motors. On the Remigo, you can see there's 3 nuts and bolts here. So you just need a wrench to go over that nut and then an Allen key for the other side. You'd take this off the stand. You want 2 people. One person holds the motor, the other loosens this up, and then you can slide this down or up. You do need to leave about 15 centimeters or about 6 inches between right here and the highest point you can bring up that tiller bracket to. So just keep that in mind if you need to go really long. With the Temo 1000, you just have to loosen 2 Allen head machine screws. There's one right where my finger is and then one below. It might be tough to see it there, but you just loosen those up. Then you'd take out this track here. That track, if you're gonna shorten your shaft length, you can cut it and reinsert it, or you can leave it out. It makes it slightly more efficient hydrodynamically, but mostly it's just for aesthetic purposes. So very easy to adjust the shaft length on either of these motors. And it's a big advantage they have because if you're using one of these electric outboards across more than one boat, this might be a great choice if you need a different shaft length. Or if you sell your dinghy and you buy a different one that has a different transom height, you don't necessarily have to sell your motor. If you're considering buying one of these electric outboards, which we all know they're not cheap, you're probably wondering how you can secure it to your boat to prevent someone from stealing it. Each one of these electric outboards has a way to lock it up. Some are better than others. We'll jump right in. So with the Torqeedo and all of these, you can turn these transom bolts centered and put a lock right through there. On the Travel and the Spirit, these are pins that are not easy to remove. On the Remigo and the Temo, you can remove those with an Allen key. So it's not a perfect solution, but it might deter someone who's looking for an easy steal. The other thing you can do with the Torqeedo is run a cable lock through the handle on the battery. And then you can also run that cable lock through one of these holes here. They're designed for the remote kit, but if you're using the tiller version, you just pop this black cap out and you can run a small cable lock through there. The other way is if you remove your battery, right, take it home or put it inside your boat, there's a nice metal handle here that you can also run a cable lock through. So a few different ways to lock up the Travel. When it comes to the Spirit, you can do something similar where you run a cable lock through the handle. You can also run a cable lock through here because there's this bar, or you can lock these up with a regular padlock. On the Evo, there's no way to lock the tiller to the motor. On the 1.0 Plus, The tiller is non-removable. I don't think it's particularly likely someone's just going to steal the tiller. Probably don't even know how to remove it, but someone did ask about that recently. To the best of our knowledge, there's no great way to lock that up. The other thing you could do for a Spirit is buy one of these lock sets. These are kind of cool. They're made by an ePropulsion customer in Europe who wanted a better way to lock up his motor. We've got one for the battery and then one for the motor. So the battery one just fits in that blue handle. We lock it up, and now you can't lift this blue handle up and thus cannot remove the battery from the motor. And then on the motor side, you can always do that padlock, but with this lock, you can see one handle is going to slip in there, the other goes there. Just going to open that up, push that in there, fold that in, and then that snaps back. And then we're going to lock it by turning that tab down, and then you see you can't pull that off. These are plastic, they're 3D printed. You could smash it off if you wanted to. This one would probably be a little harder to break off, but it's not a perfect solution, but it's great because you can still use your motor while it's all locked up. You don't have to take that cable lock on and off every time. Next up, we have the Remigo for the transom bracket. Again, you can put a lock through there, but these are Allen head machine screws. But you can put a regular padlock through there to lock the bracket to the boat. And then the only way that we're aware of locking this up to the transom bracket is by replacing this pin with a thin rod that has a lock on the end that prevents this from coming up. To the best of our knowledge, Remigo does not sell anything like that. You'd have to find something third party. And then finally, with the Temo 1000, they do sell a security kit. We'll overlay that on the screen here. We don't have one with us today, unfortunately, but there's a small metal bar that goes through here, I believe, that prevents the battery from being lifted out of the motor. And then there's a padlock that would go through these two transom bolts. And then I believe there's another lock that prevents the motor from coming off of the bracket here. I would imagine it's a metal version of this pin with a lock on the end. So there is a way to lock all of these motors up, but what's great about them is they're so portable. So if you have your motor somewhere that you're concerned about, you can always take it off and put it, back in your bigger boat or somewhere else where it's not as easy to steal, opposed to a gas outboard that's so much heavier and so much more of a pain to lift on and off your transom or your boat. So just like gas outboards, most electric outboards have a sacrificial anode. That anode is designed to corrode before any metal on the motor corrodes itself. If you're using one of these motors in salt water, you want a zinc anode. If you're using it in fresh water, typically you want an aluminum anode, or in the case of the Remigo, a magnesium anode. So starting off with the travel, one thing to keep in mind is this ships stock with an aluminum anode for the shaft. So that's right down here on the back of the shaft, right behind the prop. You get an aluminum one when you buy the motor, but if you're using this motor in salt water, you have to buy a zinc anode instead. There's also some anodes that are within the transom bracket. So if we lift this up and then we come around the back here, you'll see that I believe there's 3 anodes kind of throughout the transom bracket, one on each side here, and then one up above there. Those, unlikely you would need to replace them very often, but they are there to help protect the transom bracket from corrosion. We also have a bunch of different anodes on the Spirit. We've got one on the back of the shaft, just like the Travel. We have one underneath the pod in front there. And then we have a couple more that are on the transom bracket. There's one that's the transom bracket ones are in there, and then there's one just under here. The ePropulsion Spirit ships stock with zinc anodes. On the Remigo, we have similar setup. We've got a zinc anode on the back of the shaft, and this does ship stock with zinc anodes. Zinc anode on the back of the shaft, and I believe there's one just in front of the propeller there. And then there's also one up on, or kind of within the transom bracket here. Come around to this side, should be able to see there's one somewhere in there. A little trouble finding it, but to the best of my knowledge, there is one in there. The Temo, on the other hand, does not have any anodes. We actually just called our rep to learn a little bit more about it. What he said is that, since the majority of this motor is plastic and the main part of the shaft is anodized aluminum, and the motor is not designed to live in the water, it does not have any zincs. And that makes sense in that, you shouldn't be leaving this motor down unless you're using it. Typically, people aren't using these motors for very long, so it doesn't have that much time to corrode. With that in mind, if you do have a Temo 1000, definitely don't leave it sitting in the water. We don't recommend that for any of these motors, by the way. Don't leave it down unless you're using it. Lift it up and out of the water. So we'll see over time if the Temo 1000 has any corrosion issues. Personally, I'd feel a little bit better if it did have a zinc, but it is what it is. Might be totally fine. With maintenance, the most important thing you can do for an electric outboard is rinsing it with fresh water after use in salt water and making sure that the electrical contacts stay clean. So with the Travel, you want to rinse it all off, and then you also want to spray a little bit of water down the shaft. The shaft is hollow, so it doesn't float. And you can see right there, if you come around here, there's a little hole, and you should want to spray a little fresh water down there. You'll see it drains out the shaft right at the bottom there. And then the electrical contacts don't have cables. They come with a little bit of dielectric grease pre-installed at the factory. So recommend keeping up with that. Occasionally some contact cleaner is what Torqeedo recommends. And just keeping those electrical connections free of corrosion and putting that cap on when you're not using your motor. Very similar with the Spirit. You want to spray a little bit of water down the shaft by turning it to the side. And you want to keep, these are the holes there, and you want to make sure you're keeping all of these electrical contacts clean. This does not come with any dielectric grease from the factory, so we recommend getting like a toothbrush, putting a little bit on here. You really don't need much, and then monitoring these for corrosion and cleaning carefully as needed. If you do need to clean them, just be really careful not to break those pins. You want to try and clean it gently with a toothbrush, a little bit of contact cleaner. The Remigo, there really isn't much to it. Spray it off with fresh water and monitor the charge port for any signs of corrosion. But it's so simple, there's really not too much to maintain and too much to go wrong. Finally, the Temo 1000, just like those other motors, the shaft does fill with water so that it does not float. So what we recommend is when you're done using it, pull your battery out, spray off the bottom of your battery, spray a little water down the inside of the shaft there, and spray off the outside of the shaft, and make sure you're keeping the electrical contacts here and on the motor side clean and free of corrosion. A little bit of dielectric grease certainly goes a long way with that. And one other point from before when we were talking about housing, one of the nice things with the Temo battery is it is aluminum housing. It only has plastic on the top, and then this button here is what tells you your state of charge rounded to the nearest 25%. So nice and durable battery there from Temo. So now we'll do a little overview on warranty, service, and maintenance. So the warranty period on the Travel and the Remigo One is 2 years no matter what, whereas with the Spirit and the Temo 1000, you get 2 years out of the gate, and then if you register the product with the manufacturer, you get an extra year of warranty coverage. I know with ePropulsion that has to be done within 30 days of your initial purchase date. We highly recommend doing that. Not sure what it is for duration off the top of my head with Temo, but certainly worth it. Once you know you're keeping your motor, definitely register it. You get an extra year of warranty coverage. In terms of service, there's very little in the way of regular recommended service on each of these motors. We'll do a quick overview on kind of maintenance here, but compared to a gas outboard, no winterization and virtually no maintenance. But if you do have a problem with one of these motors, you can bring it to a dealer or directly to the company to get it serviced. With Torqeedo, not every dealer is also a service center. They service these motors at Torqeedo USA in Illinois, and then there are Torqeedo service located around the country. With ePropulsion, every ePropulsion dealer, at least at this time and to the best of my knowledge, also needs to service these motors. So we service ePropulsion motors here, and most other dealers either do or should. With Remigo and Temo, not quite as clear on where these motors are serviced. Obviously, if you buy one of these from us and you have an issue, feel free to come to us. I'm sure the manufacturers themselves service them directly. Since they're newer and smaller companies, just aren't sure exactly how that works yet, but presumably their dealer network will also service these motors. And if you're curious to know the answer to that, give us a shout and we'll get back to you. So that brings us to the end of our very long, hopefully very thorough and helpful video comparing all of these great 3 horsepower, 1 kilowatt electric outboard motors. These are all great choices for sailboats, dinghies, freshwater fishing boats. Once you go with one of these electric motors, I don't think you'll ever go back to gas. If you do have any questions on these motors, feel free to leave it in the comment below or send us an email, give us a call. All our information's on our website, emoelectric.co. There's also a free downloadable PDF comparison guide there that breaks down all the different information we talk about in this video. So if you don't know which motor you want, go download that guide, and hopefully that will help you make your decision. If you still don't know, feel free to give us a call. I'll probably be the one that picks up the phone and we'll get you sorted out. So thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe and enjoy your electric motor.